Hey guys, hope you had a great week. Today we're taking a look at the sound from I Like You by Post Malone, and it sounds a little like this. It's a really cool kind of chill sound that you can use in pretty much anything. Let's jump right in. Okay, so the first thing that we got to do when we are recreating a sound is figure out what the actual chords and melodies are that are in the song. Once you have that all figured out, just come up with a short little description for what you're hearing the sound to be and let that guide your sound design. To make our sound today, I'm going to be using pigments, and the reason I'm using pigments is that I don't really know what is being used in the sound, but I do know that pigments is really versatile. If I need to go in any one direction, I can do that. All right, let's get a brand new sound going here by clicking new preset to make sure that there's nothing we don't know about. So let's start off with just kind of a basic waveform. Let's do something from the 100M, just to give ourselves kind of a starting point. I kind of like this last one on the wavetable. If we go to 3D mode, you can see which one I chose. I like to start my sound design by sort of shaping the envelope first to get it sounding a lot closer to what we're after. In pigments, you can go to the envelopes tab here, and then on the left is the VCA, which is basically the amplitude envelope for our sound. And we know that the sound is a bit on the plucky side. So what we need to do is bring the sustain down right about there. Make it more plucky. I like to slow down the attack a little bit just so it's not so digital sounding, I guess. Then we're gonna push this release up a little bit. Let's just lengthen the decay amount a little bit. I'd kind of like this sound to be a little bit less mid-rangey, so sometimes a good thing to do is to do some wave folding. So if you check this out, I'll go back to 2D mode so you can see what I'm doing. Something like that. We also know that it's not just plucky, but it's also kind of wide and detuned sounding. So in order to tackle those two things at once, we can head over to the unison section and add some more detuned voices. That's always my favorite part right there. The next thing that we know about the sound is that it has an active filter envelope, because you can kind of hear it going gow, gow. We need to add that into the mix here, and I'm gonna use the Jupiter 8 filter here at 24 decibels per octave. And then what we can do is assign an envelope to the cutoff frequency of the filter. So if we just use, let's say, envelope 2, which is this guy right here. In pigments, you'll see this little plus sign that appears when you are hovering over a certain parameter. So if you click that little plus sign, you can start to add or affect or modulate the parameter however you see fit. And so for us, it's going to be envelope 2. Okay, so let's bring it all the way up just to be extreme for a second. Then we can start shaping the envelope. So I'm going to bring the sustain roughly a little less than halfway, maybe. And we'll set the release to be a little longer. I'm going to set the decay much longer. Okay, so now if we go back and reduce the depth of the envelope on our cutoff frequency, gives us this really nice mellow sound. And while we are assigning modulation to the cutoff, I actually like to have some keyboard tracking. It has this really natural sound to it where higher keys are a little brighter, maybe not so much for the lower keys, okay? These are the details that make it sound a little bit more dynamic. Now let's turn off the first engine or the first oscillator and bring up another wavetable so that we can add another oscillator into the mix here. I just want it to sound a little bit more beefy. Right now it is a bit boring, so let's fix that. And I'm gonna add in this additive int 4, just for a different flavor. How about right there? You'll also notice too that the envelope applies across the engines, which is just so sweet of pigments to do for us, so we don't have to keep copying and pasting the envelopes that we have set on different oscillators. The other thing I like to do is bump up the semitones by 12 or 1 octave, so it doesn't clash too much with where the other oscillator is set. Sometimes it gets a little bit muddy, so it's a nice thing to do. And you know, of course, we gotta add some detuning to this too. Bring up the voices to, let's do a little bit more significant. So if we turn on the other engine and see how they combine together, here's before. after. I'm going to share one of my favorite things to do in sound design, and that is to use randomness to add some dynamic and analog qualities to our sound. What you can do is head over to the random tab and you get these options available to you. And what we're going to do is use sample and hold. So every time that I play a note, it will spit out a different value, which is exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and assign the wavetable position to be modulated by random 2. If you go back and listen to the main sound, you'll hear this really subtle kind of pitch modulation happening. I describe it as dizziness. It's like a slow LFO that just affects the tuning. So let's do a bit of that on our own. So we head over to the LFO tab here. You'll see we've got these LFOs already going. I like to have mine free running for this. Kind of want it to be at a different part of the cycle every time I play it. It's a little more analog sounding that way. So what we need to do is assign LFO 1 to affect our fine tuning for each engine. So if we click the little plus sign again and turn it up a little bit, and then we'll go to the other engine and we will turn it up for that one as well. We'll start to hear it working. Which makes me feel so dizzy almost, but in a good way. So now it's time for us to add some more effects like there are in the original, and it's very lush sounding. You know, I could hear maybe some delays, some reverb. So let's add a couple of those things and see where we get. So if you just head up to the top and you go to the effects, it's already got some delay and reverb for us. Let's mute the reverb for right now. If we turn up the dry wet here so we can hear it. Let's make it a ping pong delay because when I listen to that original sound, there's a lot going on in the stereo image, so maybe this can assist us that way. I'm gonna make it a little darker. Let's increase the feedback a little bit. Cool, maybe something like that, and we take the dry wet down. I do want to add some reverb to this, but I'm not going to do it in the synth. I have a reverb in mind that I think would work really well, and a send already set up for it. So if I enable what I've got, it's super lush sounding, and it's actually the Convolution Reverb Pro from Ableton, and it's kind of a cathedral preset at about a little over 7 seconds. And it just makes it sound super lush. So let's take a listen to what we got here with all of that. The final piece of the puzzle here is that the original sound is much, much darker than what we've got. So I put a low pass filter at about 2K, and I'm also going to go back and just bring the cutoff back so it's darker to begin with. So those of you who want to get even closer to the original sound, there's actually, if you listen to the right and left channels of the original, which we'll do right now, you'll hear that there's like kind of a flute thing happening. To me, it sounded like a mellotron version of a flute or something. So I pulled up a mellotron. It's kind of got this thing happening. And then together, when his vocals come in, there's also this lower kind of bass melody that happens too. So let's use the sound that we made together in combination with all this to see how close we can get. So there you have it. And one thing I really like about this sound too is that it doesn't have to be as filtered as the original. You can use it. Really open it up. Almost a little bit 80s. So that's kind of the final result. And now you got a great keys sound that you can use in any of your other productions. If you guys have a request for another sound that you'd like to hear us design together, please feel free to leave a comment down below, and we'll see you next time.